Friends, it is Editing Jen here. I have just edited this whole video and realised I had a tiny piece of lipstick on my front teeth. I could refilm the whole thing, but you know what? Life is too short and who cares? So let's pretend that it's not there. On to the book discussion. Mwah. Goodbye. Hi everyone, I'm here today to talk to you about what I read in September. As usual, all of the books I mention will be linked down below. I have a very sleepy Lola beside me. I'll do a cutaway because I don't want to pick her up and disturb her, but I know that you like to see her. So I have a big pile of books here and a lot of different stuff in here actually. So first off, I read the new Tracy Chevalier novel. This is A Single Thread. I read this, one, because I wanted to, and two, because I was reviewing it for Toast magazine. So I'm not going to speak about this in depth here. I'm going to link my review in the description box down below if you would like to go and have a read. But essentially, I love this. This is like a warm, empowering hug. It's about Violet Speedwell and it's set just after the First World War. She's lost her fiance, her brother also died in the First World War. She doesn't get on with her mother. She's trying to discover, work out what direction her life should be going in. So she decides to move to Winchester and she gets a job there. She's living on her own. She's left her mum and she also discovers the people who create the kneelers and embroider at Winchester Cathedral. So they're making all of the prayer mats. And within this community, she discovers her own voice and the collective voice of women around her. And it's just a joy to read. And I would love to see this turn into a TV series. I could imagine it as, you know, Sunday night viewing. I would like that very much. So if you would like to go and find out more about that book, head over to the article I wrote for Toast, and if you comment on that article, you can win 2 books. So next month for Toast, I am reviewing these 2 books, which take their inspiration from Frankenstein, which I thought would be apt for October. So Frankenstein by Jeanette Winterson and My Name is Monster by Katie Hale. So to be in with a chance of winning those, you have to go over to the article that I wrote and leave a comment. Not just a comment that's saying, you know, please enter me. Talk to us about your experience of reading Tracy Chevalier's books. Have you read any before? Girl with a Pearl Earring, Lady and the Unicorn, her latest book. If you haven't, would you like to and why? So tell us a little bit about that in a comment and you could win those 2 books. The giveaway is open internationally as well. Next up, I read this book here. I have mentioned, I think in a few videos, that I've been really in the mood for crime and thrillers recently, possibly due to the change in seasons, but I have been gobbling up lots of books in those genres. This was the first one of those that I picked up. So this is The Lying Room by Nikki French. It was very kindly sent to me by Simon and Schuster. This is my first Nikki French book, but it is not their first Nikki French book. And I say their because Nikki French is not one person. She is a husband and wife writing team. And it's so fascinating, I think, especially as an author, to read a book written by 2 people, because I can't tell what ideas came from one person, what ideas came from another person. It certainly doesn't read as though one person wrote one chapter and then they, you know, kept on switching, which is, I'm sure, not what they do anyway. It was really, really intriguing. I loved this book. It's not a perfect book, I acknowledge that, but it really, I don't know, ticked all the boxes, or most of the boxes, for what I was looking for when I picked it up. This is about a woman called Neve Connolly. She is a wife, she's a mother. It begins with her at home. She's getting her family's breakfasts ready. All of her kids and her husband want to eat different things, but she's basically on autopilot. She knows what they all want, she's used to doing it, and then she gets a text from the person that she's been having an affair with saying, you must come to the flat. So she goes to the flat where she often meets with this man that she's having an affair with, and when she gets there, the man is dead. Now she is met with a dilemma, and it's one of those moments when you end up shouting at the book because you know she's doing the wrong thing. She thinks, I can't call the police because if I do that, then everyone will know that I've been having an affair. What should I do? My fingerprints are all over this flat. If I leave and don't call the police when somebody else discovers him, people will think I did it and they'll find out that we were having an affair anyway. So what she decides to do is completely clean the flat. She doesn't get rid of the body, but she cleans all the sheets. She washes all the surfaces. She gets rid of every trace of herself. And you're just thinking, Neve, you are starting something that you just cannot control at all. It's brilliant. I love that premise, and how traumatizing and strange to lose someone that you're so close to and you cannot tell anybody else that you have lost that person. Anyway, so it goes on from there, and Neve is trying to work out who killed this man that she loved. And it doesn't let up at all. That was one of the things that both thrilled me and also infuriated me. There is no moment for pause, really. I don't think the main character really sleeps at all, ever, and there is just a constant stream of people coming to her house in a way that didn't feel particularly realistic. The payoff in this book at the end wasn't 100% for me, but I really enjoyed the process of getting there, even if I didn't love the reveal at the end. And because I really enjoyed this, I decided that I would go back and read some of the backlist books. So this is a standalone. You don't have to have read any of the other books that they've published, but I decided to check out the series that they're particularly known for, which is a series based on a psychotherapist called Frida Klein, and the first book is called Blue Monday. I think I started listening to them 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm already on the 3rd book. The narration is incredible, and the payoff in these books is much better, I think, than in The Lying Room. I suppose it just depends on your taste, what kind of things you're going for. In this, you're not following the police all the time. You're following Frida, and she starts working as a consultant for the police. And I don't want to say too much about these books, actually, because I don't think there is much I can say apart from I'm really enjoying them, and they're great to listen to when I'm out for walks. I am enjoying how each of them is a little bit connected, so I think you do have to read them in order. And I have guessed some of the twists, but not all of them, which equally makes me feel like I'm doing good work and paying attention, but also the book is still surprising me. And I think that's what we all want from a crime book. So I would really, really recommend the Frida Klein books. So I have read Blue Monday, I have read Tuesday's Gone, and I'm currently listening to Waiting for Wednesday. As I said, the narration is really good. So if you enjoy audiobooks, I recommend those. All right, next up, I read this, which is a non-fiction book called Poems from the Edge of Extinction, and it's edited by Chris McCabe. This is a book that is, as the title would suggest. So there are 7,000 languages spoken around the world, and it's estimated that by the end of this century, we will speak half of those. So we will have lost 3,500 of the languages that we currently know. One language is falling silent every 2 weeks. So this is a project that Chris set up at the Poetry Library in London, seeking to chronicle and record and help possibly save some of the languages that are dying out. And many of the languages, even though lots of people don't speak them anymore, they are being written, and they have a higher proportion, I would say, of poets than maybe a language that is thriving. So for instance, the Livonian language in Latvia only has about 20 speakers at the moment, but within those 20 speakers, 3 of them are poets. So this book takes 50 classified endangered languages and has a poem written in that language and a translation into English, and an introduction about that translation process as well. What's really wonderful is that some of these poems are translated by the poets themselves. I find poetry in translation particularly fascinating. All translation is fascinating, but I think because poetry itself is even more subjective than, say, a novel, the translation of a poem is more a rewriting of that poem than I think a piece of prose. So when you have a poem that has been translated into, in this case, English by the creator of the poem in that language, that's really, really special. So I've enjoyed going through this book and examining some of these poems, seeing what people have to say. One of my favorites is one by John Elvis Smelser, and this is in a language called Atna, and this poem is called The Poet. I am beginning to write in our language, but it is difficult. Only the elders speak our words, and they are forgetting. There are not many words anyhow, they are scattered like clouds, like salmon in Stepping Creek at Tonsina River. I do not speak like an Atna elder, but I hear the voice of a spirit, hear it at a distance, speaking quietly, to me. So the Atna people believe that their language was given to them by a raven, which I think is really beautiful. And this poet, John, is the youngest speaker, the youngest fluent speaker of his language. The next speaker up is 30 years older than him. So if you're interested in things like that, I would really recommend picking this one up. Let's go back to the crime thriller bit for a minute. I was in Edinburgh and I went to a bookshop, and I decided it was one of those days where I would just go to the bookshelf and I would pick out a book that called to me. I wouldn't look up recommendations, I wouldn't ask a bookseller for help. Sometimes I love asking booksellers for help, and sometimes I just want to kind of go foraging and see what I can find. And occasionally you find things that are amazing, and then occasionally you find things that you wish you hadn't bought and you had asked the bookseller for a recommendation instead. Sadly, this was one of those times, so I won't dwell on it, but I will mention it because I read it, and it is The House by Simon Lelek. It has quotes on it from Mark Billingham and Tana French, and it was a Radio 2 book club book, but it did not live up to the expectations I had because of these things. It is about a couple that end up buying this creepy old house. They don't really know why they have been allowed to buy it, because they think that the offer that they put in was lower than anybody else's. And they start to discover things in the house. It starts where a crime has been committed and then you go back. And the way it's set out, it's as if these two characters are chronicling their thoughts for each other in one document. So you go between the two voices. I just didn't really believe in the voices, I don't think. They didn't feel distinct enough for me. Lots of things were so convenient in this book, and the end reveal I just thought was a bit stupid. So this one was not for me, I'm afraid. But you know, you win some and you lose some. I then read 5 poetry books, which I won't speak about here because I have reviewed them in another video. These ones here, my favourite I think was Flesh by Mary Jean Chan, but these are the Poetry Book Society's autumn picks. I review their seasonal selections every season. So I made a video where I talked about these, but I also analysed the poems, not all of them of course, but I picked one poem from each book and I did a close reading and annotation of that poem, and then asked you if you would like to talk about those poems in the comment section down below. Many of you have been asking me to do more dissect a poem videos, so it was like book reviews and dissect a poem all rolled into one. So if you missed that video, I'll link it in the description box down below. I'm currently reading this, so I will talk about it when I finished it, but I wanted to mention it because it's so long and I'm not sure when I will finish reading it. But this is The Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. This is his newest book in 20 years, his second novel. The first one was The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which I'm sure many of you have read. This one reads a lot like Stephen King. There are things in it that I'm finding a little bit frustrating, and I'm not sure about it yet. I'm only 100 pages in, it's 700 pages long, so when I've finished it, I'll come back and talk to you about it. At the moment, there are parts that I'm finding really gripping, and there are parts that I'm thinking are a little bit clumsy, so we're gonna have to see how it all pans out in the end. Before I go, I read 2 picture books that I'd also briefly like to mention. I read this, which is The Star in the Forest by Helen Kellett. This is a proof copy, so the finished copy is a hardback. This is really lovely, and I found the illustrations in it really nostalgic. So some of the drawings of the people in it, they're just outlines, and the scenery in the background and all the beautiful colours are the things that shine through. It's about 2 sisters, and one of them is really excited, wants adventure, and one of them just wants to admire the beautiful sky and go to bed, but then they see something fall in their garden, and it may be, as the title would suggest, a star, so they go out to collect it. It's really cozy and I think lovely for this time of year. And then the other one that I read was this one here, which is A Terribly Friendly Fox by Susanna Lloyd, and it's illustrated by Ellie Snowden. I met Susanna at the Bradford Book Festival. She came along to the event that Katie and I did for Franklin and Luna Go to the Moon, and she mentioned that she was having her first picture book published, and she asked if the publisher, who is Simon & Schuster, could send me a copy, and I said yes. This book is delightful. It's like The Tiger Came to Tea meets, I would say meets Roald Dahl. This is really quite dark and twisted for a children's book, and I am delighted about that. And this is about a fox who comes around to intrude on a party that all of the woodland creatures are having. And he says he's reformed. In fact, in Franklin and Luna in the Book of Fairy Tales, there is the big bad wolf. And he says, you shouldn't believe all you read, you know. I'm vegetarian now. I do yoga too. So as you see, I've changed. So like in my book, this is the wily fox. And he says he is reformed and he is a vegetarian now. And he is called Gerald. And he would just like to play games with them. So they let him in, these poor little woodland creatures, and they play games with him, and they have dinner, they play musical chairs, and they do disappearing magic tricks, and in every illustration the fox's stomach just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until everybody apart from the host of the party is gone. It is just great. I got Mr. M to read this in bed last night. Sometimes we do picture book storytelling to each other. Not very often, just sometimes. And I had already read it and I asked him to read it out loud and he read it and he finished it and he went, wow, that was a bit twisted, wasn't it? And you know, that's one of my favourite things. Twisted, dark, but also very funny and mischievous. If that sounds up your street, purchase it for yourself or a little one in your life. As I said, all of these books will be linked in the description box down below. I would love to know what you have been reading recently. Please let me know. I hope you're having a great start to the week and I'll speak to you all very soon. Lots of bookish love. Bye.